Hello, everybody. My name's Rosie Elliott. I do know lots of you. I'm one of the co-founders of Engaging Women, and I absolutely love International Women's Day. It's one of my favourite days of the year, and I always want to find a way to celebrate. This year's been very difficult. Normally, I host a brilliant charity lunch in a lovely hotel, make lots of money, and I love that, but we haven't been able to do it this year. So thank you to Frome Town Council for doing this, because this is equally brilliant. And bringing all of us brilliant women together. That's what I love about today. I'm just going to try and share a document with you that I found. I was in a hospital last week, and I happened to be walking the corridors of this hospital. And can you all see that? Oh, no. I think I've dropped out already. Can anybody?
Yeah.
Oh, you can. Sorry.
Yeah.
So there it is. So this is, I just saw it on a wall in a hospital. Board of directors, 3 women sitting at the top. Isn't that just heartening? I couldn't help. I took a photo because I thought it looked so fantastic. And Louise Barnett, the chief exec in the middle, I thought, I'm just going to give her a call and say congratulations and tell me about the ethos and what it is that you do that gets 3 women to the top. I am one of those terrible people that counts posters like this, and I go, oh, there's always more men than women in my head. Or, sorry, always more men at the top than women. And I did this, and I did this quick count, and look at it, those 3 women, the chair, the chief exec, and the company secretary. So that was my Happy International Women's Day poster. And I couldn't speak to Louise because nobody answered the phone. So that was a great shame. Anyway, as Rachel said, go in the chat, ask me anything. I'm merely your link person, probably the person with the biggest mouth, I'm afraid, and that's why they've asked me. So if you need anything, just let me know. I'm going to hand over now to our first event, and that is Cheryl.
So here I am. Yes, Cheryl Sprinkler in the house. For those of you who don't know me, I run a fitness class called Mojo Moves, which is all about getting your mojo back. Take me to the places that I love. Looking forward. How bad have you been? Oh, I've eaten my way through lockdown. Namaste. Choose life. Choose to empower. Choose to inspire. Choose to support. Choose to walk safely in the streets at night. Choose to be together. Yes, give yourself a hug. Give yourself a pat on the back. Mojo reclaimed. Oh yes. Thank you and good night. Mwah.
Rosie and Rachel and all of you lovely ladies who've joined today, I just wanted to say, first of all, I'm so proud to be a lady mayor in Frome, and I think it's a great thing for all women to take a participative role in that. But I really wanted to pop in just very quickly to wish you all luck. I'm so sorry I'm not going to be able to attend most of this, but I'm bang in the middle of my chemo treatment. I'm just about to go off to Bristol for some radiotherapy. So I'm so sorry I can't join you, but I really want to wish you a fantastic meeting. I'm sure you'll have the best time. That was such a great start with our wonderful own Cheryl Sprinkler. She's just amazing. And I know you're going to go on to have a great time. So thank you, Rosie. Thank you, Rachel, and everybody else who's organizing this. Have a fantastic time. Lots of love.
I'm Jen. I live actually in Warminster, so I always feel a bit of a Frome imposter when I come to any Frome-based events. And I hope you don't all sort of chuck me out of the event based on that. I live in Warminster. I've got 2 boys who are 12 and 9, and my husband and various animals. And I used to be a vet, and I now run an organisation, that always sounds really grand, it's just me, called Sustainable-ish, so a social enterprise called Sustainable-ish, which is all about sustainability, all about imperfect eco-action, all about sort of trying to make it as accessible and appealing as possible to as many people as possible, and you know, that no step is too small. It's all about the compromises that we have to make. It's all about this idea that you know, we're all starting from different places, we've all got different challenges and different circumstances, and that's absolutely okay, and that there's no green hierarchy, no green sort of medal that you're aiming for, that every single step absolutely counts and that no step is too small. So that all started when we spent a year buying nothing new as a family, which was 8-9 years ago now, 2012, 2013 we did it. And at the start, I just was quite naive. I thought it'd be quite a fun challenge, and hadn't really, I thought we were quite green because we did our recycling, but hadn't really joined any of the dots between what we were buying and the climate crisis. I mean, this was 8-9 years ago. This was pre-Greta, pre-Blue Planet 2, pre the sort of school climate strikes, all the awareness that we have now. But it was a real eye-opener for me. And I started to blog about the year, and I actually blogged every day for the year, which was far harder than not buying anything new, and sort of discovered that, you know, there were other people who were concerned about the climate crisis, that there was this kind of online community of people, and from there sort of Sustainable-ish grew. It's been through various different iterations and things, and I've been really fortunate enough to have 2 books published, or nearly 2 books published. So the first one, the Sustainable-ish Living Guide, came out in January last year. And the second one, the Sustainable-ish Guide to Green Parenting, actually comes out on Thursday. Both published with Bloomsbury. So, you know, that's been a real steep learning curve, I guess, in terms of how the world of publishing works, and, you know, writing a book, and that terrifying thing where somebody said to me the other day, it's like putting your homework out there to the whole world to mark, you know, that sort of vulnerability that comes. And that's where I'm sat at the moment, with 6 days to go before this one. Well, it's already hitting people's bookshelves, but, you know, that kind of like, oh God, is this any good? Are people going to like this? Are people going to hate me because of what I've said? And so yeah, that I can, and I will probably relate a lot of the sort of resilience things I'm going to talk about in terms of sort of, you know, the book and writing and things like that. And I also founded in September last year a membership called the Knackered Mums Eco Club, which is kind of what it says on the tin. It's for knackered mums, but you don't have to be a mum. You just have to, I guess, relate to that idea of being knackered and overwhelmed and tired. And it's a membership club with sort of monthly focus and group calls and small group coaching and book clubs and all kinds of amazing stuff, and some absolutely wonderful women in there. But I really wanted to create a safe place for people to come and to make a start and to be imperfect, because I think we're very guilty in the eco world of having what I call the big green bashy sticks, where, you know, someone will sort of tiptoe in and say, oh, well, I'm doing this, and well, that's not good enough, why are you doing that? And I think that's really off-putting for people. And I also am very aware that within sustainability and eco stuff, there's very much an echo chamber. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a lot of the time, and I think that there's probably an awful lot of sort of mums and people out there who are sort of aware of climate stuff, want to do something, not really sure what they should be doing, wouldn't necessarily pigeon themselves as a green eco person, but want to be doing something. So this idea that we can talk about knackered mums and all the overwhelm and stuff that comes with that is my hope, that we can help to sort of make that a bit more accessible, or maybe even a bit more appealing for some people. So the chat, let me see if I can get the chat up. So please do post. I'm going to sort of ask you some questions. I'm going to try and make this as interactive as we can for an online thing, so it's not a sort of death by PowerPoint. So please do, you know, pop questions, thoughts, comments, whatever into the chat. I'll try and leave 5 minutes at the end for reflections, for thoughts, for any questions and things like that. But yeah, please do. So self-resilience, I won't say the F word, but what the hell is it? So I did what, you know, we're all sort of like, oh yeah, self-resilience, that sounds great. Oh, well, what I was like, well, what actually is it? So I, you know, headed to Google, and this is a definition from Psychology Today. So talking about resilience is the psychological quality that allows some people to be knocked down by the adversities of life and come back at least as strong as before, rather than letting difficulties, traumatic events, or failure overcome them and drain their resolve. Highly resilient people find a way to change course, emotionally heal, and continue moving towards their goal. Rosie, great question. How can someone become a member of the Knackered Mums Club? I'll pop a link at the end, but that's really great. I will pop a link in there. So yeah, and that sounds like, I guess we all want to be like that, don't we? We all want to be resilient. And I sort of read that and I think, God, I'm not in any way resilient. I sometimes feel like I'm, you know, one of these ships getting buffeted around by the wind constantly at the you know, depending on how well or otherwise life is going. But you know, I think probably I am, and I think most of us are probably more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. We're all still here. We've survived a year of lockdowns and homeschooling and pandemics and everything else, and we're all still here, and you know, we have probably had to really dig into some of that resilience, probably quite subconsciously over the last year, and maybe goals have shifted and things like that, but that, you know, it's all okay, and some of this I think will come down to a bit of self-acceptance as well. So I would love to know what you think as women in business, some of the challenges. I mean, I've just brainstormed, and I will sort of, these will pop up, the things that I've brainstormed that, you know, I think are particular challenges that that I face around sort of resilience and building a business and an online presence and all those kinds of things. But pop into the chat, what do you think are some of the challenges that you feel like you face, and we'll just see how many common ones there are, because I'm willing to bet that a lot of these are probably going to be pretty common, and it can feel very much like, why me? You know, I'm bombarded with all these different issues and things. But time, brilliant one, Hannah. Yeah, definitely. I think we're all disconnect. That's really interesting, Sabine. And I guess at the moment as well, there's been a real, feels like a disconnect, because we've all been, you know, literally isolated, haven't we? So I'm going to start popping mine up, but keep popping yours into the chat. So imposter syndrome, I've already talked about this. I'm like, what am I? Why have you asked me to do this? What am I doing here? Who am I to write a book? You know, I had a big wobble a couple of days ago. Who am I to write a book? Who am I to write a book about parenting? I don't know anything about parenting. Like, oh my God. So, you know, this sense of imposter syndrome, I think is very strong. I'd be interested to know, I don't know if there is any data to say whether it's worse in women than it is in men. I suspect it probably is. Great, got some more coming through. Balance between work and play, yet computer time overload, change, not able to access things which restore resilience. Yeah, definitely. You know, and probably there are more challenges at the moment, obviously because of everything else that we're going through. So work-life balance, somebody else has mentioned that. Fear of failure is a really big thing, isn't it? When we're in business and we're putting ourselves out there, you know, that's one of the things. What if I've written this book and it's been published and no one buys it? Or what if people buy it and then they're like, well, that's a load of old rubbish? That's a really strong sense of like, oh my God. But there can also be a fear of success. What if this business grows and it's too big for me and I can't cope with it, and then I'll have to do all these different things that I never really wanted to do, and how's that going to work? Fear of judgment, you know, that's a really big one for me, and like I said, at the moment, that sort of vulnerability of putting something out there and putting it out there to be judged and to ask for judgment on. Comparisonitis, God, is anybody else? I'm a massive comparisonitis sufferer. You know, I am constantly looking on Amazon at the book charts, and you know, seeing oh, somebody else bought a book that's a bit similar, how's that doing, is that doing well, or so and so's got this many social media followers and I've only got this many, and so it's really, I find it quite debilitating at times, this comparisonitis. Let me know if you relate to that. And overwhelm, you know, there are so many things when we're, I mean, just life at the moment is quite overwhelming, isn't it? Keeping up to date with all the different restrictions and the things that we can do and the things that we can't. Going to the shops is overwhelming. So many things, and you know, and then we add into that sort of running our own business, and we add into that any caring responsibilities that we might have, you know, for kids or parents or anything else, how that's going. And I think as women, we probably you know, we take on a lot more of this than maybe our male counterparts might. So some other ones, great ones that are coming up in the chat. Wasting time and procrastinating. My God, I'm the biggest. To let you, just a little secret, I did these slides about 10:30 this morning because I put it off and put it off and put it off. Being comfortable with uncertainty. Yes, wasting time and procrastinating. Changes which are outside our sphere of influence. We're going to talk a little bit about that, Justine. Lack of exercise, uncertainty. Yeah, all of these things. There's a lot of challenges going on, and particularly as women trying to run our own business, trying to run homes, trying to keep families, mind, body, and soul together. It's a lot. So it's not surprising if we're all feeling a little bit less than self-resilient at the moment. So I've got 10 things. It's going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour. It is not going to be a comprehensive list. But 10 things that I think might just be little things to think about, things to consider that might just help you to develop some of that resilience, to keep going when things feel really tough. So the first one is to think about your why. Why are you running your own business? for me, my why, and I talk to this as well about, like, to my audience in terms of sustainability, and to the knackered mums, I talk about, you know, why do you want to make these changes? Why do you want to live more sustainably? So for us as women in business, why do we want to run our own business? You know, 9 times out of 10, it's probably not going to be to get rich, because we have all discovered that it's probably, there may be easier ways to get rich. I'm not sure that there is any surefire, quick, easy way to get rich. But for a lot of us, it will be about work-life balance. It will be about that flexibility. It will be about being able to work and fit it in around other responsibilities that we've got going. For some of us, it will be impact. So, you know, for me, it's really important that I generate an impact at the same time as generating an income. So, you know, I really want to be able to enable and encourage and empower people to make these changes to live more sustainably, because ultimately, you know, and you can keep doing this. There's an exercise where you ask yourself why, like 5 times. So why do I want to do what I do? Well, because it's really important that people are empowered to live more sustainably. Well, why is that important? Because we're in the middle of a climate and ecological crisis. Well, why is that important? Because actually, if we don't do anything, the future for my kids is looking really, really scary. You know, and I don't want them to turn around to me in 30 years' time and say, why didn't you do anything? What the hell were you lot doing? You know, so you can kind of dig into this why and keep asking why, like an annoying toddler, until you kind of get that nugget of why are you doing what you're doing. And for me, it is very much comes down to my kids and their future, and feeling like I'm doing everything I can. So let me know in the chat what your why is. Yeah, that brilliant quote about comparison is the thief of joy. There's another great quote. I mean, this is probably going to be a quote-tastic and a cliche-tastic talk. There's another great quote about don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle, or don't compare your middle to someone else's end. Comparing ourselves with others is said to be the fastest way to pain. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let me know your whys, you know, even if you haven't thought through it, or actually if you're like, I can't process a why at the moment while you're talking at me, but just jot down, you know, what is my why, and think about that. And that can be a little piece of something to reflect on and come back to. Make a to-do list. I bang on about this so much because I think, and probably especially as women, we're very, very good at having to-do lists, aren't we? Big, long lists. I've got one here. You know, one of the things was do slides for this afternoon. This to-do list of all these things we've got to do that gets longer and longer, never seems to get any shorter. And we're very, very good at beating ourselves up for all the things that we haven't done. And we're very, very good at disregarding, dismissing, forgetting about all the things that we've already done. So when I talk to my knackered mums in the club about this, I talk about I mean, I did an in-person workshop. These things are unheard of, aren't they? I did it January last year around sort of, you know, sustainable-ish stuff. And some of the mums from school came and things, and they were all like, oh God, I really shouldn't be here. I don't do anything green. I was like, no, that's the point of being here. But before we start, can you just spend a couple of minutes brainstorming all the eco things you've already done? Oh, I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything. They probably all had at least 5, if not 10 on there. So, you know, make this to-do list of things you've already done in your business, because you're like, oh, well, maybe I haven't got the right number of social media followers that I want, or this or that. But actually, well, therefore you've already set up a Facebook page and you've already got so many number of likes or whatever like that. So do you know, like, and it doesn't matter how small these things are. Make them, you know, absolutely don't dismiss anything. Brainstorm this to-do list, sorry. Keep it somewhere with you, because you'll remember things to add to it when you're out walking the dog, or when you're on the school run, or when you're in the shower. Keep it with you, and then keep adding to it. So every Friday in the club, we have a hot cuppa award, and everybody is just like, right, this is your invitation to come and to just share what's gone well this week. It doesn't matter how small. And, you know, we're sending you a virtual hot cuppa. And then at the end of every month, we have these monthly planners, and there's space in there to update your to-do list. So, you know, try and make this almost a bit of a habit that you get into, so that you have that time for. No one else is going to come up and give us a pat on the back most of the time, especially when we run our own business. So let's give ourselves a pat on the back, and let's reflect on the things that we've done. So that can be another really lovely thing to do as well, and quite empowering, I think, as well. You know, so many people, I encourage them to do it in the group, and then they're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And so every Friday, everyone goes, I haven't really done anything this week. And then they'll reel off like 3, 4, 5 things they've done. So it really is a powerful thing to do. Somebody mentioned this earlier, thinking about what can you control, what is in your control, what can you influence, and what actually is completely out of your control. So thinking about, I was trying to think of an example for this, and I was like, okay, so the book. So in the sphere of my control is writing the best book that I can, researching it as well as I can, you know, making sure I've got all my citations or whatever it is, you know, like that is within my control to make that the best book I can be. Within my sphere of influence, I guess, is encouraging, inviting people to buy the book so that it can have as wide an audience as possible. Everything else, probably pretty much out of my control. I can't make people go and buy the book. I can't make people read the book. I can't make people act on the book. So the things, and then to actually, so these are the things that are in my control. So what can I do? And I just have to let the rest go. And I think especially at the moment when so much feels out of our control in terms of, you know, businesses having to pivot to do things online. And I mean, like Cheryl's taken all her classes online, I think. And, you know, so the fact that there's a pandemic is out of our control. How the government reacts to that and the restrictions and things that they put in place, pretty much out of our control. But actually, what are the things that we can control around our business, around our home lives, all those kinds of things that we can control? And that, again, can be quite powerful because it doesn't make those things any less frustrating, any less annoying. But, you know, it's kind of like almost compartmentalizing. Okay, that bit I actually can't control. So I'm just going to not even let go of that, but I'm just going to turn my focus, my attention, my worries to the things that I can do something about. Number 4, set some goals. I'm a big goal set. Well, I say I'm a big goal setter. I love the idea of goals and goal setting. And I, you know, some people will roll their eyes when I talk about this idea of SMART goals, but I talk about this a lot in the club. And so it's a bit like saying, I'm going to run a marathon. So I'm sat there on the sofa with my bar of chocolate, and I go, and someone comes up to me and goes, "You're going to run a marathon?" And I go, "No, I'm not." And they say, yeah, you're going to run a marathon, and you're going to run it in 3 weeks' time, and you're going to run it in less than 4 hours. Off you go. I'd be like, "No, I'm not. Don't be stupid. I'm going to sit here and eat more chocolate." If somebody came up to me and they said, "You're going to run a marathon," all right, okay, "You're going to run a marathon in 6 months' time. You're going to run a marathon in 6 months' time, and it's going to be, it's a long time of year for the London Marathon, but say you're going to run the London Marathon next year. You're going to do it in a time of under 5 hours. The very first thing you need to do is have a look in the cupboard and see if you've got your trainers. Here you go, I'll come with you and do that." That suddenly feels much more doable, doesn't it? And actually, I'm going to be with you, or we're going to work out together the steps that you need to take to get you from chocolate encrusted sofa to running the London Marathon in 6 months' time. And I'm going to, you know, we're going to work out together the step-by-step process to do that. So for me, that's the whole point of setting goals, is that once you know where you want to get to, and if you're really specific about where you want to get to, you then start working it backwards to break it down into chunks. So somebody described it to me as, you know, sort of getting the sat nav. So if I was meeting a friend in, you know, heady days where we could do such things, if I said, "Oh, I'll meet a friend in London for a day out or something," if I just said, "I'll meet you in London," we're never going to find each other, are we? If I said, "I'm going to meet you in London at this, you know, this is the postcode, this is the street name, here's my mobile number to ring me if you get lost," we're probably going to be able to meet each other. And I can work out what time I need to be there, what time train I'm going to need to get, what time I'm going to need to leave home, all those kinds of things. So actually setting goals, Justine said, yeah, how do we eat an elephant? One spoonful at a time. And it can really help to break down that overwhelm. So we can have these, and sometimes it just really helps to have it written down. Actually, my goal is to write a book, or my goal is to launch a membership, or to launch a new product or service by the end of, you know, and making these goals time bound really helps. Like if you'd said to me, "Come and give us a talk at some point," I would never have done the slides. If you'd said to me, you know, I want you a book that will come out at some point," it wouldn't have got done unless I've got a deadline. Things don't get done. So again, you know, break it all down, and break it down into baby steps. So break it down into something. You know, so the goal is to run the London Marathon or a marathon in September this year. So you know, that means that in 3 months' time, I need to be able to run a half marathon. And so in a month's time, I need to have done Couch to 5K. So that means that, you know, in this week, I need to have found my trainers and downloaded the app and probably been out for my first little shuffle around the block. You know, so break it down until you literally get to something that you can go and do in the next couple of days. You know, ideally something you can do, you know, 10, 15 minutes, so that it just becomes, we're making this as easy as possible, removing as many different barriers as we can. to help make things happen. So, you know, with writing the book, so okay, so what's the first thing I have to do? Well, you know, I do a chapter outline, so I know what chapters I want to write, and then you know, start with one chapter, start with one bullet, and then the way I write is, you know, I tend to sort of brainstorm and bullet point all the things that I want to write and the areas that I want to cover, then I'll pick one of them, and then I'll do more bullet points and go through. So you're making it, otherwise if I just sat down and went, oh, I've got to write a book today, like, I'm not going to do that, that's far too scary. Okay, I think we focus a lot of our worries and our fears, and we talked about, you know, I mentioned sort of fear of failure, thinking about, what could go wrong, but actually, what could go right? So I'm there going, shit, what if nobody buys my book? What if nobody likes it? What if they all think it's rubbish? Well, what if it does amazingly well? What if everyone loves it? What if it's like I mean, I don't think it's going to be, but what if it's a Sunday Times bestseller? What if it's, you know, what if this is the book that people are like, my God, this is the book that we've been waiting for? Like, that could happen. And also thinking about what's the worst that actually could happen. So the worst that actually could happen for me with the book is it's a complete flop, nobody buys it, and I have to pay my advance back to the publishers. That's probably the worst that could happen. That money is still sat in my bank account, so if the worst happens, I have that money to pay them back. And you know, so it's not like we're going to be bankrupted, we're going to be out on the street, we're not going to be able to eat, all those kinds of things. I will feel like a bit of an idiot, I will have egg on my face, it will feel very uncomfortable, but actually my family, my house, you know, the things that are really important are still there. So I think, you know, sometimes, so definitely think about what could go right, what could be amazing about what you're wanting to do, and, you know, what would be the best case scenario, because we spend so much time thinking about the worst case scenario. But actually, I don't think we spend time thinking about the worst case scenario. We think about, because actually, if we do go through what is the actual worst case scenario, so people talking about, you know, this a fear of public speaking, what's the worst that could happen? Well, I forget what I was going to say, and I have to refer to my notes, or I panic and I can't hold my shit, you know, and the talk doesn't happen. Well, that's all right. You're going to feel like a bit of an idiot, but people will probably admire you for having the courage to stand up there and have a go in the first place, and to be that vulnerable, you know, and everybody's still safe and everybody's alive. And so let's kind of try and get some context and some proportion, and that doesn't make it feel any less horrible when things do go wrong. But sometimes if you go, actually, what is the actual worst thing that could happen? And then your brain goes, oh yeah, no, that's not actually that bad, as I thought it was going to be. And when you can kind of actually write down what is the worst that could happen. Perfection. There's a guy called James Victor, I think he's written a whole book around this, and obviously this idea that I think we spend a lot of time waiting for things to be perfect before we put them out into the world. There's a brilliant Seth Godin, who's a big sort of business, I can't remember the word, but he's like a big business guy, and he talks about this idea of the shepherd's hut, and actually, like, what's the minimum viable thing that you can get out there, so that you can get an idea for your business out there, test it, refine it, get it out there again, test it, refine it, rather than making sure, you know, you spent 8 months polishing this online course and it's going to be absolutely amazing, and you've done all the videos and you've got them professionally filmed and blah blah, and you put it out there and no one buys it because actually that wasn't really what people wanted. Whereas if you just banged up a landing page and gone, this is what I'm thinking about, guys, it's going to be this, and it's going to be this much money, and it's going to be, you know, what do you think? Then you've got some feedback from that, and people go, actually that's too much money, or that's not enough money, you should be charging more, or oh gosh, that many modules seems quite overwhelming, or, you know, and then you go, oh okay, brilliant, that's great feedback, thank you, how about this one? You know, and so just being comfortable with sitting with that idea of imperfection, that, you know, and I talk about this a lot with the sustainable-ish, so you know, there is no perfectly green as far as I'm concerned. There is just by being alive, we're being unsustainable. So, you know, it's okay to do things and to not do them perfectly, or it to not to be somebody else's idea of perfection. That is absolutely okay, but we will never get anywhere, or it will take us much longer to get anywhere if we wait for everything to be perfect. It's like, I remember when we were thinking about having kids, you know, there is never going to be the right moment to have kids. You are never going to be as financially secure as you want to be, or in the job that you want to be in, or whatever. It's just, you've just got to kind of go with it and see what happens. And sometimes if things fail, there's that whole thing, isn't it? Oh, what's the acronym? Something about it, you know, not there's no failing, it's only learning. And we have to fail to succeed. I know I keep banging on about the book because it's just at the forefront of my mind, and it's quite an easy example. When I wrote the first book, or when I wanted to write the first book, it was very much a memoir of our year buying nothing new. Of my age, you know, my agent helped me put together the proposal and put it out to publishers, and there was a little bit of interest, and then nobody really bit. It just sort of died a bit of a, you know, it just sort of fizzled out. So I had a bit of a sulk. Nobody likes the book, it's rubbish. And then sort of 6 months later, I was like, I really do want to write a book. I really feel like that, you know, this book, I want to write this book. So I went back to the drawing board and redid the proposal and went back to my agent, and she, you know, we sort of amended it together and stuff, and then she put it out there, and then the book happened. And actually, I don't, you know, that original idea that I had wouldn't have been anywhere near as useful, as accessible, as probably as successful as the first book has been. So actually, you know, if somebody had just gone, yeah, brilliant, we like that, it might have only been a smaller publisher, or it might have not, you know, it might have just had one print run or whatever. So actually there is a massive amount of learning, and it doesn't make it feel any easier or less soul destroying or anything like that, but trying to recognize and trying to be able to take a step back and think, I know it's a cliche, but what can I learn from this? What lessons is this teaching me? Because there will always be some lessons in there. You know, it's really scary launching a new product or a new service and putting it out there, and nobody, you know, well, what if nobody buys it? Okay, so what if nobody buys it? Is that because I just didn't reach the right people? Is that because the pricing's wrong? Is that because actually nobody? And so then, you know, you can ask for feedback. You can say, guys, why isn't this resonating with you guys? What is it that I can take, and I can take back, and I can reiterate? I'm doing all right for time. Particularly, I think, relevant for International Women's Day and for this group here and that sort of thing. You know, as women, I think we're awful at asking for help, aren't we? We're really bad at, you know, my husband, I think, you know, the whole homeschooling thing, and because I was just getting on with it and doing it, he was like, it's all right, isn't it? And I'm like, no, it's not all right. Like, you're not seeing the times when I'm just upstairs, like screaming into the pillow because we've just had another argument about fractions, or, you know, and actually I said to him, look, you know, I'm really, really struggling with this. And then the irony, 2 weeks before the kids went back to school, he came back and went, oh, work have said they can furlough me for 2 days a week to until the kids go back. 2 weeks before the kids go back. I was like, well, that's great. That's really lovely. Would have been more helpful 3 months ago. You know, and maybe if I'd asked for help you know, as soon as we went into lockdown, said, look, I know from past experience, I'm going to really struggle with this. Is there a way that we can make this a bit more equal and a bit more so that there's some help for me? You know, and alongside this, ask for help, but look around. Who can be your network? Who can be your tribe? Who in your existing network can help you? So if you hate doing social media, is there somebody in this network here who can help you? Can you do a skill swap? You know, it's okay not to be able to do everything. One of the frustrations I find is that, you know, aside trying to balance, you know, being a mum and running a business, but it's all the different hats I have to wear as a sole trader. I have to be able to do my accounts, which I'm rubbish at and I hate doing. I have to be able to do marketing and sales, which really make me feel horribly uncomfortable. I just want to spend my whole time talking to people, writing, you know, doing Zoom calls with my club, all those sorts of things. That's the bits I love. I love seeing people take action. I love getting the feedback that they've done it. I don't like having to go, come and join my club or come and buy my book. It feels really uncomfortable. So I would love to have somebody to do my marketing for me. I'd love to have somebody to do my accounts for me. So actually, what bits of that can you realistically outsource? Are there any bits that you can outsource that might not cost you anything because you're doing a skill swap or something like that? But yeah, Rachel said this idea of finding your tribe. And I think that's so powerful because, and I talk about this a lot in the eco space, it's very easy when you're making eco changes or you're starting to try and sort of look around at what you can do to feel like you're alone and you're the only one who's trying to do it, especially if your family and friends aren't particularly into it. And you can be, you know, working really hard on your recycling or something, and then you see Barbara down the road putting her bin out, her black bin out, and it's overflowing, and you can see that there's cans and bottles in there, and but it feels like you're the only one, and how can you possibly make a difference as just one person, and all those kinds of things. But find your tribe, your people, the people who can support you, yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help. And then we couldn't talk about self-resilience without self-care, could we? Self-care gets a bit of a bashing, doesn't it? And I think, I sort of laugh at the idea of self-care, because I'm like, when am I going to fit that in? When am I supposed to do that? But for me, sitting in bed reading a trashy book, that is my idea of self-care. That is my kind of indulgence. That would be my lovely thing to do, is just to lie on the sofa and to read a book, or have a lie in and read a trashy novel in bed. For other people, but I also know that, like, exercise for me is really important for my mental health. So actually, I was I suddenly had this realization in February or something, like, oh, this hour or 45 minutes when when I force myself out of the door for a run on a Sunday morning, that's the only time I've had to myself for the last month or whatever, and I didn't want to do it, but actually I felt so much better afterwards. So whatever self-care means to you, when can you steal a bit? And you shouldn't have to steal a bit of time, but when can you find a bit of time when you can do that? When can you prioritize that? When can you say to your, if you have got kids and things like that, where you're able to say to your other half, look, can you just take the kids for an hour or whatever, or I'm just going to park the kids in front of the telly and I need to just go and do X, Y, and Z. And it does feel horribly self-indulgent, and all those kinds of things that we're told as we shouldn't be, and we should be looking after everyone else first. But this whole fit your own oxygen mask first. If we burn out, we're no good to our families, we're no good to our businesses, we're no good to the impact that we want to have on the world. So those are my 10 things. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. But yeah, have you got any thoughts, any reflections, any questions? I just put that little thing there, nothing changes if nothing changes. Just whenever I do my sort of normal talks around sustainability and things, I always encourage people afterwards, or invite people afterwards, okay, what's the one thing you're going to do after listening to this? Because otherwise, what's the point? We've all just, okay, we've had a nice time and we've watched Cheryl do her, we've hopefully joined in with her amazing disco, and maybe we've gone and got our donut and things, but actually nothing's going to change unless we change something. So what's the one small thing that you're going to do after this session now?
I'm going to be showing you a hand sequence today for relaxation of the body and mind. So you can use cream, you don't have to. I'm not going to be using any cream today. We're going to warm up our hands first. So just gently rubbing your hands together, a bit like washing your hands, which I'm sure we're very, very familiar with following the last year. So yeah, just a nice gentle movement. I'm then going to squeeze one finger, not really hard, twist and pull. Now we're doing this not to try and pull our fingers out of the sockets, just to increase the circulation, to really relax the fingers, hands, increase the circulation, as I say, and get the muscles to relax a little. So just squeeze, twist and pull, squeeze, twist and pull, squeeze, twist and pull. Now obviously I've got my hands at an interesting angle so you can all see them, but you can do this kind of nicely on your desk or your lap, however is more comfortable for you. Okay, so now we're sitting comfortably, we're feeling a little bit more relaxed. First point I'm going to show you is the solar plexus. So the solar plexus taps into your parasympathetic nervous system, so it will help reduce your heart rate, reduce blood pressure, essentially sets the mood for relaxation. So at the base of your third finger, trace it down, and underneath your metacarpal heads, which essentially is like the ball of your hand. Now, put a finger just underneath the bone you'll feel there, and then the point you come to underneath that is your solar plexus. Now, relax your hand. If you're touching or if you're pressing lightly, it should feel slightly different on that point than it does to the left or the right. It should feel slightly softer. Might feel quite nice, a little soporific. So we're going to do some breathing here. So on the inhale, you're going to gently press your thumb in, not to the point where you're trying to push it through your hand, just a nice gentle push. And on the exhale, you're going to release. So you can either do the pushing in with the inhale and releasing on the exhale, or if that feels a little odd, you can do a circular motion as I'm doing now, whatever feels better for you. So one more, inhaling and exhaling. And then we're going to do the same on the other hand. So base of your third finger, underneath your metacarpal heads here, or the bony bits, the ball of your hand, finger space, your thumb, relaxing your hand, inhaling and exhaling, inhaling, exhaling. The last one, inhale and exhale.
How has your business adapted, evolved, survived during the pandemic?
So we were closed with a lot of hospitality last year through sort of the core months of March and April and May, and weren't able to open until June. We open seasonally, so we're not open for the full year. So we lost 2.5 months out of my normal 6 to 7 months of trading. And we had to convert to being a click and collect online store for a while we were closed. And then when we reopened, we had to do it with bookings to try and manage the number of people in the garden, which reduced the number of people that were able to visit. And we had to do a takeaway service. I had to pare down the menu. I had to separate my staff. And we also refocused on the garden and the nursery side of it, because that's the bit that actually did do well. So it was a quite a, you know, sort of a different year trying to figure out the model that worked best for us. So we definitely adapted. And we definitely evolved. Surviving was a little bit touch and go. I'll be really honest. It's been a really rough ride, and we've been closed now for 5 months. And we're hoping to reopen on March the 31st. And again, not too sure what the restrictions are and what it's all going to be like. So I'm going to be playing it by ear when we do reopen. But yeah, you know, thank God for my family who've been bailing me out, and unemployment universal credit. That's all I can say. That's what's helped me survive. You know, a little bit talking a bit before we came onto the panel. You know, personally, I realised it's been quite a tough thing to navigate as an owner of a business, because you know, you're worried about the safety of your staff. You're worried about the safety of your customers, and you're also worried about the bottom line. So it's, you know, I'll be looking forward to a year that isn't quite like that, I'll be honest.
What's been your top survival tip for this past year in terms of self-resilience and self-care?
So I think right from the very beginning, from the first lockdown, as soon as the children were out of school, I think I spent one day trying to still work at the same level, running my business and homeschool to and just thought, well, this is absolutely impossible, like most parents, I'm sure. Right, how are we going to do this? You know, realizing that it was going to go on for a while. So I've separated from my husband since, but at the time we were still together. So we just decided that we were going to split the week. The priority was all of our well-being, particularly my daughter's well-being. And so that's what we did. We did half our work each, and spent the other half of the time homeschooling. So I think definitely it was a massive forced slowdown for me. And normally, as I said, I travel quite a lot. So I'd be here, there and everywhere, rushing around. So it really made me look at all of the smaller things and really appreciate much more what was going on much closer to me. and obviously within my own family. So I think, but my top tips I think are, yeah, I would say having some kind of consistency, because that has been quite difficult, because it, you know, there hasn't been the routine. So the things that I've clung on to are I do strength training regularly with a local gym, which has all obviously been on Zoom, but I've maintained that, and frankly that's probably been the only thing that I've shown up to at the same time each week. Everything else has gone a bit out the window. I've been doing my journaling. That's been very important to me. So reflecting each day on you know, how I'm feeling. Sorry, one of my dogs is trying to escape out of the room. Hang on. And then yoga and meditation as well have really helped me massively. But I think what I really wanted to say is what I ended up doing was I would just write a list of things that I was going to do, and that would be quite a mixture of work stuff, things for me, and obviously things for my daughter. And each day, like, I think my lists were getting shorter and shorter, because I was trying to be realistic about what can I actually get done today. Like, you know, I don't want to get to the end of the day and I've only ticked off a few things and then I feel crap, basically. And what I was trying to do is just find something, some small thing that could give me joy each day. And that might have just been, you know, making a cake, or I don't know, just really little things that I would never have seen as particularly joyous previously. I would have always, you know, imagined a much bigger thing, an exciting adventure or a trip, or something physical. But so just finding joy in little things, and maybe that's just going for a walk and watching a robin for a few moments, or just very mindful, very small things. Just what can I be grateful for, and what can give me joy each day. That was really there. That's my biggest tip.
What are you most looking forward to personally or business wise in the next year once this is all over?
Okay, well, business-wise, I'm looking forward to actually physically going into a business and feeling the culture of the business and seeing the business from the inside. To do engagement sessions as they're meant to be done in person, to stand in a training room and actually get some real engagement and learning going because you're physically in the room with them. I mean, that said, I am doing a half-day training session for Somerset Chamber of Commerce next 26th of April, I think it is, on conflict management, and that will be all on Zoom. So a half day on Zoom is quite hard work. It's hard work in a training session anyway, because your energy is up the whole time, but I just can't wait to go in and be with people and get the real energy in the room going. And in my personal life, I think they're very down to earth, and I think most people in this room will say exactly the same as I'm about to say now. But I'm looking forward to hugging my children, hugging my husband, in that order. I'm looking forward to hugging my friends, having coffee, chatting, basic stuff like sitting in your kitchen with someone that you haven't done that for ages and just having a chat. Meeting someone for something to eat and having a drink, or going for a walk together, which, you know, I realise I'm a little bit behind everyone else, but we're almost at that point. It's just that, really. My husband, if he was asked, would say, I'm looking forward to be able to sleep in the bed instead of on the sofa, because he spent this year 6'2", sleeping on a sofa. So there we go.
Oh, thank you, Deborah.
Okay, so hi everybody, and welcome. I'm going to do a quick macrame session. So we'll need 4 bits of string, approximately 50 centimeters long. So anybody working along, and a ring. I'm going to do it on a big ring so that you can see easily. So this is the size you normally make. And there's another one up on the wall here, like that. That's with the brown string. So that's finished off with a wrap around the bottom.
Wow.
So this one's a bit chunky, but that's how it's turning out. So you've got your first knot at the top, then one in the middle, two knots on the side, and one at the bottom there. Okay, so you should have finished your little key ring.
Oh,
You do as many as you like around there.
yeah.
And then when you get really good, you can make one of these.
Wow.
Put your plant in there.
That's lovely.
My name is Dawn Denton, and I have been living in Frome now for, I think it's 8 years now. And obviously my accent isn't local. I was born and raised in South Africa, which is where the Namibian thing really sparked my excitement, which is one of our neighbors. I have over lockdown, because I was going to be tour guiding over the summer months, go back to tour guiding, and of course that never happened. So I set up the Content College, which is a college and a membership community to create content, whether that's public speaking, blogging, presentations, social media, whatever it is, podcasting, that you want to create content for a small business or for a project. So we have different dynamics in our life that we need to work on. And I know that we don't have a balance in all of our dynamics. Our first one is, and we've mentioned this today before, is self-care. You know, it's your dynamic of self, wanting to be an individual. It's about your mind and your body, your immediate possessions. There's certain things that you just like having, you know, you just like having certain things. And then there's the individuality that you get to express fully. And there are elements in that you know that you may have at some point over the last 12 months probably neglected. Then there's the family dynamic. And this is living with the people that you live with, or your parents, or your siblings, or cousins. And this forms the foundation for your future. I think this is the most creative dynamic, because if you're raising children, or you have to identify family activities, or how does the household work, or how does the timetable work for the family, this is also another element that I think has found itself a little bit pressured during the last 12 months. The next dynamic is the dynamic of group. And this could be as big as your state, your nation, your race, but right down to your book club, or your street, or your community group. You've joined the Frome Writers Collective, or it's your organization or your company. And again, this dynamic has gone through massive transition in the last 12 months. I think for some of us, we might have actually put a lot of emphasis on this dynamic in some ways more than in others. The next dynamic, when we think about creating some goals for ourselves, is about humankind. And this is the survival of men and women for men and women. So there are things in your life that you can do that can support the survival of mankind. And we spoke about the sustainability earlier on. It might be as simple as maybe you haven't recycled. Maybe you haven't recycled as much as, I mean, I sometimes see myself walking towards the bin with something and I'm like, no, I can recycle that now. So that's another dynamic that maybe we can set some goals for ourselves. Then there's the dynamic of life. And this is all things living, animals and plants and birds and fish, anything directly and intimately motivated by life. And again, this is probably a dynamic that a couple of us may have neglected over the last 12 months, and something to maybe think about how we can work on those. Then there's the dynamic of spirituality. And I know for some, again, spent a lot of time working on the spiritual being. Now, you might have a spiritual element in your life that you have either given an identity to, so it might be a religion, it might be a belief system, or you don't have that as an identity. You know, you find yourself being spiritual, but it doesn't have an identity. And both are fine, and neither is right or wrong, but it's important to think about your beingness, and have you set some goals for your being? And most importantly, it's about creating and thriving. And I think one of the things that we often forget is, when was the last time we were creative? When was the last time you sat down with paints, or you made a macrame something, or you baked something, or you know, just with pens and pencils, maybe did some calligraphy, something creative? And that's where our spirituality also needs to thrive. And what I think is really important when you're thinking about your goals is think about what dynamic has suffered. And I think for myself, my personal self dynamic has suffered in the last 12 months, but my group dynamic has gone absolutely ballistic, because we've been able to connect with people globally. We've been able to, you know, meet people that we never would have had an opportunity to meet. But maybe an element of my group dynamic has suffered over the last 12 months because I haven't been able to go down to a meeting at the Three Swans, or go and, you know, meet my book club, or whatever it is. Spirituality has also, for some people, been a really difficult thing when you're feeling pressured or stressed. And I think this is why it's such a valuable lesson, really, is to work out what we've learned from the past 12 months and what we can shift. We had a discussion in our breakout room about how will our lives be when we go back to the new normal. In some ways, I don't think much is going to change. I think it'll be the roaring 20s of the next century. We'll go out and have some fun, but I think there's elements of our lives that will very quickly slip back into the way we always were, unless we're consciously aware of these different dynamics and how we can set goals individually for each of those. So we set goals, and we choose not to. You know, I often laugh at, nobody starts a diet on a Thursday. I mean, who does that? You only start it on a Monday. You know, we also think about goals, you can only start them on the 1st of January. Well, I like to hold back, because I can also take the Chinese New Year as my new start in February if I really screw it up in January. And then you've got the Jewish New Year at the end of the year again. So you can actually set goals all throughout the year. But what really holds us back, and we did touch on this a little bit this morning, there's a fear, and the fear of success and the fear of failure. You know, yes, it's exactly the same. You know, if I set a goal and I don't achieve it, then I'm rubbish, and so I'm not going to set it in the first place. Or if I set a goal and I achieve it, oh, how am I going to suddenly fulfill hundreds of orders? How am I going to deliver thousands of hours of training? How is this? So I don't want to put a goal out there, because I don't know if I would cope with that. There's a fear of uncertainty. You know, in the present, we know what that feels like. But if I set a goal that takes me out of the present and into the future, I don't know what that looks like. And I don't want to go there necessarily. It's not comfortable for me, which is the last point as well. But I don't know where that goal will take me. You know also that once you've made a decision, things shift massively in your life. And there's a fear in that. The sense of inadequacy, it's this Instagram life that we've always led, you know, as people, even pre-Instagram. Was there a life before Instagram? I don't even remember that. But this fear of inadequacy, if my goal feels smaller than somebody else's, then I can't possibly, you know, their goal is amazing. Oh, their goal is about this crazy stuff out there. And mine is just a little silly goal. But actually, my goal could be more difficult to achieve. It could be something, you know, like stopping to bite my nails or whatever it is. And that could be more difficult in a lot of ways than something outrageous that we compare ourselves with other people. And then, of course, it's the comfort zone. You know, it's the same thing. It's the cliche of the growth happens outside of the comfort zone. So those are things that we fear, but there's behavior that holds us back too. And there's a list here that some of these might be relevant to you. And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to have a look at some of these behaviors. And this is not who you are, this is behavior that could be holding us back. And there might even be some examples on that screen. Well, some examples that aren't there that you know is a behavior that holds you back. And I think it's a really valuable exercise is to select 3 of those. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to select 3 that you think are behaviors that hold you back. Okay, so if I think some of mine is a perfection trap that I, that it has to be perfect. I can't, even this morning, I can't write that book because, oh my God, I mean, I'm not a writer. I don't have an English degree. So no one's going to bloody read my book. How embarrassing, if my language isn't perfect. The other thing that's also disease to please, but that ruminating, we're constantly thinking about what if. I also think what sometimes holds me back is expecting other people to notice my contributions. I might give in an organization or in a charity or wherever I'm supporting and helping and volunteering, and I think, and nobody bloody said thank you, so I'm not bloody doing it anymore. And I think that also tends to hold us back. And it's our expectation of what other people want from us. When you choose one of those, so of those 3, choose one and think about a goal that you can set around that behavior. So if, for example, your goal, your behavior is, let's just think about the perfection, is maybe create a piece of writing or a blog or go to an art class and say that whatever comes out is tough. I'm going to hang it on the wall, or whatever that goal is about that piece of artwork, if you're worried about the perfection, and see if there's systems that you can put in place. So like if you're not waking up in time in the morning, what is the system you can put in place? Well, you can put the alarm clock on the other side of the room so that you physically have to get out of bed. So it's a great activity that you can do on your own, but I think there is real power in maybe finding a friend and saying, can you just be my, because when you speak it to somebody, just be there so I can bounce some ideas off you. I think that is a really good idea. And then start working through those and see if you can, maybe change some of those behaviors that have been holding you back. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Is there anybody who would like to share about those behaviors? Because I think, I just wonder if there's something that you can see in yourself. Perfection trap, yep. For me, when I get angry, I get teary. And I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm going to get angry, because I don't want to then get teary and then feel like I am weak because, oh, she's the woman in the room and she's crying. Now look at her, she's over emotional. So I am quite worried about that. So if there's any situation where there's going to be, where I'm going to be angry, I'll remove myself from the situation. And is also speaking when angry. Yes, and that's the social media thing as well. You don't want to post on social media because you think, oh no, I'm going to be really angry. So it's also getting that self-control there. Yeah, you could set the goals and wait until the next day. Yep, that's absolutely. Disease to please, I think that is a really common one. And putting job before career. Yeah, I think that is something too. We're in a position where we need to bring money in. you know, we're feeling the stress of the last 12 months, and you know, it's really quite a tricky or difficult situation to then say, well, my goal is actually to find my path and my career and move myself forward. Okay, let's go on to and then this is just the final bit that I think, and again, you know, the thing with goal setting is that you've got to be, you've got to do what works for yourself. But I think the three are write, break, and take. And the first thing is to write it down. And you can have 100 goals in your head, but when you write it down, you know, when I was a teacher and I sat in the front of the classroom and I started writing stuff down, the kids were like, what are you writing? What are you writing? Am I in trouble? There seems to be this power on text, you know, writing physically with your hand. Once it's written down, it feels like it's a commitment, and it's specific to work towards, and you can physically see the goal. So that's the first step. So just write it down. That's the most important. The second is to break it down. So create mini goals, because when it's a big goal and it's, you know, to climb a mountain, goodness me, that's tough. But if you go and research, that's the first little goal. Join a climbing group is the next little goal, or whatever it is, because as soon as the goal's too big, we procrastinate. We know we want to achieve it. That's the same, you know, the book writing as an example as well. The book sounds scary, but the mini goal is maybe to write down the 10 things that you want in that book, the 10 chapters that you want to chat about in that book, and 10 things that you know about. Those are the mini goals. And maybe another goal would be to give yourself the space to sit and write. They're much easier to accomplish when the goal is broken down. And then finally, take them down one by one. You know, make sure that you remove them as a success. You know, one of the things I've started doing, instead of crossing out on my to-do list, I now have a highlighter to highlight what I have achieved in that day, because that feels so much better than, oh, look, I've got a long list, I've crossed all those things off, but look how many I've got left. Whereas when you highlight them at the end of the day, or as you get through them, it seems like those are more little celebrations than they are about not achieving the other things. And then there's the last thing that I think is incredibly valuable, is when I feel like giving up, I will tell myself. And this is about your story. Again, bringing your story. You know, I don't have to be that person. I don't have to be the person who can't do something because that is in my history. That is my past. And there's a little mantra that you can create for yourself, that if I feel like everything's rubbish and I cannot cope anymore, what am I going to sit down and say, Dawn, this is what you need to think about. That will bring you back to your goals or your visions. And finally, this is a woman I just absolutely adore, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. She was the president, she's the ex-president of Liberia. And she says, if your dreams don't scare you, you aren't dreaming big enough. And I think that is, for me, the most powerful thing to remember.
Hi, everybody. So welcome, and my name's Jyoti Pao. So I'm a yoga teacher, and I also play the gong. And I'm also a therapist as well, so I see people one-to-one. So my work is all about health and well-being. And I've also done some studying of the neuroscience of yoga with mental health. So what I'd like you to do is, I'd like to take you through a little bit of movement, and then I'd like to take you into a pranayama or some breath work, just to help to relax you. So first of all, what I want you to do is just bend your knees, and we're going to twist from side to side. So you're going to inhale to the left, you're going to exhale to the right, and just take a few deep breaths, and your arms are loose around your body. And you want to feel the twist through your spine. So imagine that you're hugging yourself. So I want you to do a long sigh on the exhale, deeply inhaling, and then long sigh, exhale. This activates the vagus nerve so that you can feel more relaxed. So what we're going to do a side stretch now. So we're going to just stretch over to the side and just take 3 deep breaths. And now just rolling the shoulders. So you're going to inhale as you bring the shoulders up and exhale as you go down. And then you're going to inhale up. And you're going to stretch up, and then you're going to exhale, come all the way down forward. Let your head and neck hang down. Then you're going to inhale, coming all the way up. And then exhale, coming all the way down. And then just breathe. And then very slowly, vertebra by vertebra, you're going to come up. Your head's going to come last. And then you're going to come to sitting. I just want to quickly teach you a very simple breath, which is really, really good for stress. And we're all living in these times where there's a lot of stress at the moment. So it's very simple, but it has a very profound effect on the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is what helps us to relax and calm down. So you're going to take 3 breaths through the nose. You're sniffing the air, so it's sniff, sniff, sniff to get a full breath of air, full lung of air, and then you're going to exhale through the mouth. So it's like this. So you're lengthening the breath on the exhale. So let's just try that together. We're just going to do a couple of minutes, and just a couple of minutes of changing your breath can have a really amazing effect on your mind and your body. So close your eyes as you do it.
Hi everyone, my name is Lizzie Boyle. I am the only thing between you and a cocktail. So I feel beholden to be super fast and get through this as quickly as possible. So I am a town councillor here in Frome. By day, I run a consultancy which looks at sustainability and energy and environmental issues, working with local authorities, national governments, communities on those sorts of issues. This session is about gender bias, understanding gender bias, learning to spot it in action, and figuring out strategies to just wipe it out of existence. It's focused on women, but recognizing that gender is a very broad construct. So it also looks at bias across a whole range of different characteristics. This is what you get if you do, or if you did a while ago, a Google search for women. The links tend to refer to your attractiveness, your fanciability, also odd things like, well, not odd, I don't know, Russian brides, Slovenian brides, armpit hair, and for some reason, Jason Momoa. Who knows why Jason is in there? In fairness, if you do the Google search for men, you get up modifiers like body, handsome, hairstyle, love, beard. And the first person I recognized on that was Danny Dyer. So perhaps, you know, we're not so badly off after all. I wanted just to clarify before we jump into the bingo terms that I'm talking about today, and I'm focused on bias. So bias is about perspectives. It's about some of those implicit assumptions that we make about people or about situations. Prejudice is more active. It's more about your attitude. It's the attitude that you've consciously formed, usually a negative judgment, and it's formed about a group without facts, without evidence to support it. And discrimination is about behaviour. It's about putting some of those attitudes into action in really harmful, damaging ways. Our focus this afternoon in the next half hour is about bias. These are the sorts of implicit or unconscious decisions and perspectives that we have on situations. We have so much information to process every single day, and we use shortcuts, mental shortcuts, to help us do this. They can be called heuristics, or they can be called stereotypes. We all do it, but as shown by the image on the right-hand side there, not all shortcuts are particularly useful. Likability bias is, what's the difference between being assertive and aggressive? Your gender. Women who are assertive are seen as bossy, they're seen as aggressive, they're liked less, they're seen as less likable. Men who are assertive are seen as assertive and bold and brave and leadery. But women are perceived, showing the same characteristics, are perceived differently. We're not bosses, we're bossy. People who are liked less are less likely to get promoted in the workplace. But here's the catch. Women who are seen as nice and gentle are liked more, but women who are seen as likable are seen as less competent and therefore less likely to get promoted. So in a workplace situation, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I'm sorry to start with bad news, but let's keep going. To our second bias, which is affinity bias. Affinity bias is the tendency we have to prefer people who are like us, who are similar to us, or who are similar to someone we like or respect or admire. And we tend to avoid, just instinctively avoid or dislike people who are different to us. It's not a conscious thing. It's just a sort of implicit thing that happens unconsciously. Now, in many fields of life, the senior leaders tend to be the white men, and those who are seen as different just get less access to them because of that difference. I mean, in this cartoon, we have, I'm going to go with the hairstyle and the frock and guess a female president. So that's a nice thing to see. But this reinforces the point. Someone saying we need more people like you in this organization. We need more people like me in this organization. It reinforces the point we all have biases. So this isn't just about male bias towards others. It's something that we all carry with us. But affinity bias is something that I think a lot of us will recognize. Swiftly on to our third bias in gender bias bingo. Performance bias. There's a lot to unpack in performance bias. So I'll spend a minute or so here. People overestimate men's performance and underestimate women's performance. If you achieve the same things, men will get more credit for achieving the same as women do, which means that women have to work harder to prove themselves. And that's something that I think a lot will resonate with a lot of people. It harks back to what Jen said at the beginning of the day about imposter syndrome and always feeling that you have to do more to be recognized for actually the same output from what you do. Men's contributions are often called leadership, natural ability, but women's are more likely to be seen as part of a team effort or just luck. Even in your school report, this starts so early, even in like school reports for a male student or a female student, the boy will be, well done, he's very smart. And the girl will be, well done, she's hardworking. There's this expectation, this pressure, and we see it very strongly with teenage girls, particularly who are put under this extreme performance pressure with regard to study and exams and being hardworking, because that's the path to success. Within a workplace environment, whether you're applying for a job or trying to win a new project or building your own business, we rate women based on their experience, but we rate men based on their potential. And this is something that recruiters do, but it's something that we also do as people who might be applying for jobs. Men are much more likely to big up their CVs, and women are much more likely to try and be very accurate and kind of more modest in their presentation of themselves and say, I have done this rather than I could do it. The other element on performance bias is actually knowing how well you've done. Women ask for feedback as often as men, but they're less likely to receive it. So we want to know how we're doing, but no one will tell us. Okay. Here we go. Up next. Ooh. This one, if you're not in the chat saying this has happened to me, then you've never been in a meeting. Attribution bias. I'll read the caption on this cartoon because it might be a little small. It says, that's an excellent suggestion, Miss Triggs. Perhaps one of the men here would like to make it. Oh, I'm going to pause at that point and say congratulations to Hannah, who I believe might have just got a horizontal line. Well done. Onwards and upwards. Our first winner, yay, you get to make your own cocktail in about 20 minutes time. Congratulations. Attribution bias. Oops, I have jumped and I love that cartoon. I'm going to go back. Here we go. Women's contributions are in discussions in meetings are seen as less valuable. And men are often given credit for women's ideas. And this is so common, that the great idea that is expressed by a woman is ignored, and an hour later it's expressed by a man and becomes the thing that saves the day. In addition, men interrupt women 3 times as much as they interrupt other men. So even when we start to talk, we're not always heard. We don't always get the chance to finish our sentences. Whereas women rarely interrupt men at all. Maybe we should learn from them. More on the theme of attribution. So this is just carrying on the same theme. Women are less likely to receive credit for their successes and more likely to be blamed for failure and held to account for that failure for longer. And there's some research from the US with surgeons who made mistakes in surgery that that women, oh, I've done it again. I should stop reading the chat. That women, that surgeons who made mistakes in surgery, that the women their careers were impacted for longer because of those mistakes than the men who made similar sorts of mistakes. You're probably ahead now because you had a sneak peek of what's coming up next. It is, in fact, beauty. This is another of those damned if you do, damned if you don't scenarios. People judge on appearance. I mean, it's been said forever. But we judge on appearance in 2 different ways. We judge people who we think have made too much effort, like Elizabeth I over here on the left. You know, she's really gone for it in a big pageant show of power. And we kind of think, yeah, it's a bit much, over the top, love. Equally, we judge people harshly if we think they've made not enough effort, like Mary Tudor over on the right here. To be honest, I really like that look. It's kind of got, you might tell the kind of rocking the black and silver is where I'm at today. But we tend to think, and this applies to everybody again, we tend to think that attractive people are more successful and more likely to succeed. And so attractive people we perceive as attractive, get offered more senior jobs and more money. And attractiveness goes back to that affinity bias I mentioned earlier. Attractiveness is often based on similarity. So if we see someone who is different, who is differently presented, differently dressed, we might judge them harshly, just instinctually. The same thing about attractiveness being seen as a marker of success is also true of height. Taller people are seen as more likely to be successful. And given physiologically who's taller on average, that's just a built-in bias. That's a bias that's just there. Another thing to note, dress codes and dress expectations, and we see a lot with talks about school dress codes and uniform codes, but it happens in the workplace as well. Our expectations about dress can reinforce gender stereotypes and also discriminate against those who don't identify as male or female. Okay. On to our next bias. Let me see what we have now. Maternal bias. So this is the perception that women are less competent and less committed to their careers or to the project they're involved with, whatever it might be, once they become mothers. And the thing here, the research suggests, is that you don't even have to be a mother to come up against maternal bias. Even a woman who has got engaged to be married is seen as less committed or less competent because the expectation is that she's then likely to go on get married, have babies, or just go on, have babies. So the effect starts really early. Let's see where we're up to. I'm just going to check the chat and see if we've got anybody up. Kate has a diagonal line. I'm not sure that a diagonal line is technically, hey, we're making our own rules up. We're throwing out the patriarchy of rules of bingo. So yes, congratulations to Kate for your diagonal line. Oops, I am messing up my slides today.
Dawn got a line as well, Lizzie.
Oh, Dawn, my apologies. I didn't see you in the chat.
Please, she's going to get her gin soon.
Fair enough. Okay, next up we have conformity bias. So as it says here, when people are free to do as they please, they usually imitate each other. So if there are prevailing attitudes or perspectives or behaviors in your workplace, or in your social space, or in your community, people will tend to fall in line with them. And those perspectives will tend to reinforce the status quo rather than to challenge it. We do have a tendency, as humans, we have a tendency to prefer things the way they are than think about the positive aspects of change or the way things could be. And using the phrase that has been part of International Women's Day this year, it does take guts to choose to challenge. Back to my Google searches. Next up, we have confirmation bias. Technically, this was not a Google search. This was done on another search engine this morning. I thought, let me just see what comes up when you Google, when you search on the internet for chief executive, and it was pages and pages and pages of men in suits. To be fair to Google, theirs was much more balanced, and perhaps one in each row was a woman. But you know, if we expect something to be a certain way, the internet is a reflection back of ourselves a lot of the time in our society. If we expect something to be a certain way, confirmation bias is a thing where you look for evidence and you like the evidence that supports the things that you believe. So if you're selling a car and you think that it's the man who's going to make most of the buying decisions about a car, you'll probably ignore the woman. But the woman could be the former chief engineer of a Formula One team, which is a true story. If you're in a meeting and you believe that the men are the decision makers, you're going to ignore the woman, who might be the CEO. The most shocking example of confirmation bias is often eyewitness reports, where you get conflicting eyewitness statements about the same incident. And they are often conflicting because they're just reinforcing the evidence that people want to see rather than what they actually do see. Okay, 2 for 1. Get your dabbers ready. We've got 2 coming up for 1 on the next slide. We have, here we go. We have the halo and the horns. So the halo effect is the tendency to see one thing about a person and assume that means that they're good at other things. So for example, you might see somebody has a good handshake and you might think, oh, that person has a good handshake. I bet they're a great leader. Having a good handshake has nothing to do with being a good leader. Leadership is not about that. But it's the sort of mindset thing that says, oh yes, I love handshakes. That handshake was marvelous. You must be a great human being in other ways. That's the halo effect. The horns effect is the opposite. It's seeing something or noticing something that you don't like about a person and assuming other things that you don't like about that person will be true. The most commonly given example is seeing someone who's overweight and thinking they're lazy. And that's really harmful in so many ways. I will also point out, I deliberately went for a male angel and a female devil, but it's very hard to get a picture of a female devil that is not some atrocious fancy dress outfit, costume, that's the word. Okay, I reckon some of these bingo cards are getting close to being full now, because we have 2 left. We have alpha bias. So alpha bias it's a very broad term for a situation where the difference between genders is exaggerated in favor of one of them. So you get things like men are strong and more physical. And the implication of that is that women are weak and less physical and less able to do things like physical jobs or physical sports. Men are natural leaders or strong leaders, implies that women are unnatural leaders or weak leaders. And so there's this distinguishing between the sexes, which boosts one and demeans the other. And then the complement to alpha bias, the contrast to alpha bias, is beta bias. And that's where the difference between the sexes is minimized or ignored. And this one can be really dangerous. Here we have a crash test dummy. I'm going to ask this in the chat, actually. Anybody know when the first... Oh, hang on. I see Justine shouting house in the chat. There we go. And Sabine and Nikki and everybody, I hope, because I've run out of biases to talk about. So hopefully that's been very successful and you've all earned your cocktail or mocktail, which will come shortly. Anybody know when the first female crash test dummy came into operation? Answers in the chat. 2019, 2020. Oh no, they've been around a little bit longer than that. Too recently, I think, is probably a very valid answer. The first female crash test dummy, the first actual female-shaped crash test dummy came into existence in 2011. So Rosie was pretty close. Ms. Hybrid 3 was technically the first female crash test dummy, and she was born in 1976 with her kids. But they were basically all shaped like small men. There was no distinction between the shapes, the body shapes. They were literally just shrunk down, much the way that medieval painters used to just shrink down adults to make, to draw infants in paintings. And the proportions were just wrong, and the shapes were just wrong. But it was because it was men who were working in the automobile design industry who were making decisions about what they would test and on whom. Another one, remember last year, I think it was, or the year before, there was a NASA spacewalk. It was the all-female astronaut crew, and the spacewalk had to be cancelled because there weren't enough spacesuits built for female astronauts. And this is NASA. It is possibly not rocket science, but maybe it is. But this brings me on to the end of our bingo. So congratulations and thank you for playing. And oh my goodness, the technology worked. Brings me on to just a few things to kind of mention. That there are these biases that are built, that are in our minds, these unconscious and instinctive biases, but actually they're kind of socially driven, they're culturally driven. And some of them are also very important structural and systemic biases that we see sort of happening at a bigger level. I've seen, thank you for mentioning Invisible Women in the chat and for putting the link in, because that is such an amazing book about the invisibility and the lack of visibility and lack of consideration of women in so many different spaces. And the example about crash test dummies came from there. There are so many examples. I'll just touch on a couple here. PPE, health safety wear for construction sites. It's only in the last couple of years that there have been real campaigns and real activism for construction safety gear to be made that fits women. Which, you know, if you don't think that matters, imagine walking around a building site full of equipment and machinery and who knows what, wearing overly sized kit. You wouldn't be allowed on. So you were effectively excluded from going onto a building site. If you don't have the right kit, you can't go onto the building site. So we're just wiping out the possibility of women going onto building sites. Google Home and digital assistants like that. Here's another one, hardwired in. 70% more likely to recognize your voice if you're a man, and to understand what you're saying if you have a male voice, because it's men who built it and tested it, and that was the default. Also, the default voice of a lot of home assistants is a female voice, which reinforces that stereotype of being able to ask a woman to do stuff for you. And there are big, big campaigns about pensions rights. Women's pensions is a really important issue. Women's incomes, because of gender pay gap and different career paths, women's incomes are lower over their lifetime, so their pension contributions are lower. Women live longer, so they need their pension for longer, but they have to rely on a smaller amount of money. So even if you don't think the gender pay gap affects you now, it will in the long term, which is why it's a crucial issue that we look at. I'll also give a shout out here. I've got, how long have I got? 2 minutes, oh gosh. A quick shout out to Susanna Walker, who's based in Frome, who started a campaign called Make Space for Girls, which is all about ensuring that play areas and green spaces are suitable, are designed with girls in mind, because they have very different needs and desires for those spaces than boys. So do look for that on Facebook. Right, this has been quite a light-hearted canter through a bunch of things, and it's not a light-hearted issue. All of these biases are also compounded and connected to a range of other issues in what's known as intersectionality. So race, age, disability, sexuality, gender, any kind of difference has a multiplier effect. Even today, Sam Smith, the singer who is non-binary, has been told that they can't enter the Brit Awards because they're not a male singer or a female singer. So there's no category, which is insane. So what can I do, you ask? First of all, that's the wrong question. The right question is, what can we do? It's not on one individual to feel that this is all their fault or all their responsibility. It's actually on all of us and the way that we talk to each other, the way we communicate, the way we organize our businesses, our communities, our society. First of all, amplify the contributions of women and of others who don't get the chance to be heard. So asking women to speak first in workshops or meetings. We've seen that in a big conference setting, it's often a man who will put their hand up to ask the first question, and it becomes a very male-dominated discourse. If you ask a woman to speak first, it becomes a female discourse, or a more even discourse. So recognize the source of those ideas and contributions. Remember Miss Triggs from earlier. Recognize that ideas are coming from people. Put women in charge of different tasks or groups, and assign what might be the female roles traditionally to men. Making the coffee in a meeting. Take the notes, will you? That sort of stuff that has defaulted to the women in the room and to demean the role of the women in the room a lot of the time to just being the servant. Push it onto the men. Push it onto the people who don't normally do it. Speak up when you see it. If you see something and you think that's just not right, find the right moment. It's difficult to just say that's not right, that's biased, but ask someone why they think that something is the case, why they felt that way. And that puts the onus on them to explore their own thinking, their own perspectives. If you're in an organization, push for access to senior leaders and mentors. Ask HR about hiring practices. How are job adverts written? Are they about experience or potential? A CV is assessed blindly or with names and photos and so forth. Think about ways of writing references, think about appraisal criteria, a whole bunch of stuff there. I'm galloping slightly. And then take the implicit assumptions test. So I think a link will go in the chat to the Harvard set of implicit assumptions tests. They cover more than gender. They're really illuminating. And it's worth recognizing your own biases when you think in stereotypes and questioning that, saying, well, where did that come from? What are the associations that I have in my brain for certain stereotypes? And can I rewire them? Can I find examples to rewire those associations? These are all learned things, so they can be unlearned. Last but not least, check your media habits. If you're always looking at the same stuff, you're going to get reinforced in the same way. And I think I will stop there and say thank you very much.
Oh, Lizzie, thank you.
I'm going to talk you through our Women's Day cocktail that we're going to do today. So the cocktail we're going to do first, and then we're going to do the mocktail afterwards. So I'm hoping that you guys all have some of the ingredients ready and something to do some shaking in, which is, it can be a shaker or a jam jar or even like a water bottle with a lid. So let's get started with the bramble. So what I would like you guys all to do first is to put some berries into your shaker or your jam jar or something else. Okay, so if you've got some blackberries or some raspberries, put them in there. Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do then, if you want to, you can use a spoon just to give them a little push down. This is called muddling the fruit. What this does is releases all the juices inside when we put the alcohol in and the ice in as well. Okay, so the next thing to go in is the gin, obviously very important ingredient there. So if you have something that you can measure in, that's brilliant. If you just have a normal shot glass, that's okay as well, or a measuring jug if you want to use a measuring jug. So what we need to go in is 45 mils. So that is basically just under a double shot. So the top of my one here has a double shot in it, and the bottom one there has a single one. So what we're going to do is just put in just under a double shot. If you want to, you can make it a full double shot, but that one needs to go in there. Okay, so that's your gin. What we're then going to do as well is add a tiny little bit of sugar syrup. So sugar syrup is just water with a little bit of white sugar in it. So you can cook it up and make it kind of a slight kind of sticky syrupy thing there, or you can literally just put in a little bit of white sugar into some water. So I've got a little bit of sugar syrup here, so I'm going to put a little splash of that in. Now, depending on how you like your cocktail, you can put a little bit more sugar in if you like them sweeter. I quite like mine quite tart, so I'm only going to put a tiny bit in mine. And then we're going to put some lemon juice in. So in your recipe, it says 30 mils of lemon juice. Now that is about half a lemon. So if you want to squeeze half a lemon into your cocktail shaker or your jam jar, that's brilliant. So I quite like to use a spoon when I'm doing mine so I can get all the juice out. So that needs to go in there. Okay, perfect. Right, and then we're going to put in some of our blackberry liqueur. So I've got a little bottle here that I'm going to put in. So in the recipe, it says 12.5 mils. So that is about half of a normal single shot. Okay. Now again, depending on how the flavour you like with your bramble, you can put a little bit more in if you want it as well. So we're going to put a little bit of that in there and pop it in too. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put in some ice. Okay, so I've got some ice already here, so I'm going to put some ice in there. Now, with this one, you need to think about the size of your cup, because I'm going to put it in a cup like this, so in a shorter cup, I'm only going to put in the amount of ice that is going to fill the cup up. So what you're going to do with this is we're going to give it a good shake, and then we're going to pour the whole thing into the glass, and then that becomes the cocktail. So if you've got a really tall glass, then make sure you put a little bit more ice in that one there, okay? So I'm going to put my ice in, I'm going to put my lid on, and I'm going to give it a good shake. Now, one of the things I was always taught to do when I was working in the cocktail bar was to make sure that the lid here, the top of the shaker, was behind me, was facing behind my back. Because one of the things that does happen sometimes when you're giving it a really good shake is that the top will come off and the liquid will come out. And so one of the things that we always wanted to make sure we were doing that is if the liquid did come out, it would go behind you and not down your front, which would be embarrassing. So we're going to give this a really, really good shake so that it's going to squash all the blackberries into it and mix up all the lemon juice and things as well. Okay, so a really good shake. Okay, so I hope you guys are all giving that a good shake there. And when you are happy that it's all shaken up and mixed in, we're going to pour it into our glass. So to garnish the bramble, I put in a little bit of lemon on the side there, and I have some blackberries to garnish it as well. So lid off the shaker, give it a good shake around, and then you pour it in, and hopefully all those berries that you had in the bottom are all nicely mixed up. And if they need to, you can give them a little stir there with your spoon, and you can see that the berries are all mixed in too. And I put in a couple of extra ones there for a garnish on top. Hopefully, oh, look at those, they look beautiful. You would end up with something that looks a little bit like this. Well done. Okay, cheers, ladies and gents. That's gorgeous.
It's delicious, thank you.
Oh, no worries. So now we are going to do a mocktail version. With me. And I'm going to bring in my glamorous assistant.
Hello, what's your name?
So this is Amber. She's been very much enjoying all of the sessions so far. So she's going to make our mocktail one. So for our mocktail, we're going to use a similar set of ingredients and a similar size glass. Now, one of the things we're going to do with this glass is we're going to give it a sugared, not that one, this one. We're going to sugar the edge of the glass. Okay, so what you can do is get a piece of lemon, so maybe the one that you used before, to get it all wet across the edge, and then you're going to get a plate and put a little bit of sugar, white sugar or brown if you want it, on the plate like this. And then what we're going to do is you turn the glass over and give it a little turn, that's it, and then turn it back over there. And as you can see on the glass now, which is what we're going to put our mocktail in, you've got a really beautiful sugared rim. And that there, when you have a little drink of the drinks, and you can do this for any different kinds of cocktails, gives you just a little bit of sweetness there when you're starting. Okay, so in this is Amber's cocktail shaker. So in here, again, we're going to put some of the fruit. Did you lose it? There you go, and put some of those ones in. We're going to put, you're just eating them, no, that's not, okay. Then you're going to put in half the lemon. Give it a good squeeze.
Well, that is a good squeeze.
There we go, look at that. Get that all in there. Perfect. Okay, a little tiny bit of sugar. No, not the sugar. No, not. I know you do. Just put a little tiny bit of sugar. Oh, lots of sugar. Very sweet. Okay, and then get some ice in there. Remember, you only want as much ice as is going to fill into that cup there. Okay. Lots. Yeah. What about that? Well, that goes in afterwards. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put the lid on, and then make sure it's on properly. That's it. And now you're going to do the shaking this time. Okay. That's it.
Good shaking. Excellent.
Wow, lots of shaking. Okay. There we go. There we go, Amber. You're going to pour it in because this is your one. Okay. It looks good, doesn't it? So that goes in there. Oh, wow. Look at the colour of that.
Wow.
Okay. So you're going to put a little bit more ice in that one. There we go. Fill it up a bit more. Okay, and we're going to put your lemon on the side, like Mummy's one. And then for this one, we're going to top it up with a little bit of fizzy water.
Oh,
A bit flavoured.
oh, nice.
Yeah, so you're going to put some in there and fill it up. Oh, and drink some of it as well. Put it in there. That's it. Good job. Well done.
Oh,
Okay.
well done.
And then, as you can see here, you've got the beautiful sugar on the rim and all of the fruit in there for a really nice mocktail. So that one is yours. Is yours. Right. Well done, Amber. Thank you for being my glamorous assistant.
That was excellent, Amber. Well done. That's a future career for you, cocktail making, Amber. Did you enjoy doing that?
Thank you. Oh, well, I really hope that you enjoy your bramble and that you have a lovely rest of your afternoon.
Thank you for everybody for coming, and all have a wonderful, happy weekend. And lovely to meet you all as well.
Yeah. Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.